The average construction project runs across a dozen different disconnected spreadsheets. And as we all know, that is exactly where mistakes happen. You update your RFI register, but you forget to claim the variation associated with it. A project management information system is designed to fix exactly this problem. So in this video, I'm going to explain exactly what a PMIS is, why it matters, how it works, and how it's going to become an increasingly important part of any construction company going forward with all the changes that are happening with AI. So what is a PMIS? Well, a PMIS is simply one place where every bit of project information lives and connects. So your RFIs, your variations, your drawing register, your costs, your budget, your correspondence records, your approvals, all of it is in one system instead of scattered across 15 or 20 different spreadsheets. So in construction, this would be a purpose-built construction management software like Mastt. It's designed for organizing all your information, digitizing and standardizing how a project gets delivered instead of running it through all of these manual disconnected spreadsheets. The reason this is so valuable in construction because everything we do in construction is related. As I said before, an RFI leads to a variation, which leads to a change in our cost forecast, which leads to a change in the project's profitability. One single event would cause a change to 6 or 7 different registers. And it's why construction projects are so hard to manage and stay on top of it, because there are so many different ongoing things that all form part of this comprehensive picture of a construction project. And because of this extensive interconnectedness, it's why the spreadsheet system of managing construction projects reliably fails. The key thing about a PMIS is it's actually built around how your organization delivers and manage construction projects. And just quickly, if you do want to experiment and see what one actually is, you can check out Mastt. I'll put a link for it in the video description where you can sign up and try it for free. You'll get access to a sample project, which is the gold standard for how a PMIS actually operates. Okay, so fundamentally, going a step further, let's dive into why a PMIS actually matters so much. Number one, the most obvious, is it's just going to reduce human errors. Spreadsheets are set up, they're fragile, they break, they rely on people entering information into registers and staying on top of what's happened. The best thing about a PMIS is it does all this automatically. The second thing a PMIS does is it standardizes the way projects are run. We all know every construction project manager wants to do things their own way. Having a PMIS means every project is run in the same way, which means they're easier for management to track and control. The next benefit is the PMIS acts as the single source of truth. Instead of having 2 versions of every file or spreadsheet Rev 1 and spreadsheet to Rev 2, the PMIS is the structured database, which is the single source of truth for all project data. Because of this formalized structure, the next problem it solves is it actually becomes a source of project knowledge and it prevents issues when a key person on the project leaves. Rather than when a key project manager leaves, you have a whole lot of half-completed actions that walk out the door with them. The PMIS is the source of truth. It knows the status of every task and what everything is up to. It makes handover much easier and prevents information leakage. And then because you're building and following a system that's proven to work, by default, you're acting in a proactive rather than a reactive way. You're relying on skilled individuals who may or may not make mistakes. You have a system that says when you get an RFI, you automatically, by default, raise a variation. When you raise a variation, it goes into your forecast cost to complete. This helps the team to maintain a proactive stance rather than being reactive and always trying to fight fires. Rather than relying or having to rely on the team to do an exceptional job, you're making it impossible for them not to. The final thing that I'm going to touch on a little bit more later, because I think it's a really important point to understand with everything that's happening with artificial intelligence, is the PMIS is your single knowledge database, your single source of truth for the project. What this means is you have basically a set of context which is easy for AI to access. And if AI can stay up to date with what's happening on your project, it's going to be 100 times more useful. Now, whether you're a project owner or a contractor, PMIS is still useful. If you're involved in any way, shape, or form in a construction project, you do need something like this to track and manage your project performance. PMIS isn't just for construction companies. Okay, so we understand what a PMIS is and why it's useful. How does it actually work? Well, the mechanism, put simply, is a centralized data repository. So your registers, your project budgets, your correspondence register. So that's your centralized data repository, and it connects to your processes. You have your database and then you have processes. They're the two core components of a PMIS. So for example, your data is your RFI register and your variation register. The process is that every time your client issues you a new set of drawings or responds to an RFI, by default, it creates a placeholder for a variation. So that process of creating the placeholder for the variation, that is the process component of the PMIS, when the actual data, the variation register, the RFI register, that is the underlying work. That's the underlying data. And then because these processes are automated by the software, they happen by default. They don't rely on people remembering to do things. They don't rely on people having to enter data into spreadsheets. They just happen automatically. For example, in Mastt, when you create a new variation for a subcontractor, it automatically adjusts the cost to complete. It's a small example, but it's important because it's tying the commercial function of the variation with the cost tracking function of managing the budget. So the core components of a PMIS will have some sort of schedule or some planning or schedule function, such as programs, task assignment, and resource calendars. I like to think of this as the when of everything's happening. So we have our activities and when they're planned to start and finish. Then for that same set of activities, in addition to having a time component, they also have a cost component. So how much is it going to cost to do the task? Typically in construction, this is also associated with a quantum of work. Then based on these cost and performance metrics, if you're familiar with something like earned value management, we also have our performance tracking measurements like our estimate to complete, our variance, our schedule performance index, our cost performance index. These are layered on top of this underlying cost schedule data. Then we'll have some sort of reporting and communication layer, which basically makes it easy for people to go into and understand the underlying data rather than having to delve through tabs on confusing workbooks. And then there will also be some sort of document control and management, like drawing registers or correspondence tracking. Okay, so if you're familiar with using tools like ChatGPT or Claude, you'll understand the importance of data and context to getting the most out of them. So when we talk about a PMIS, we're talking about having a single source of truth for the project information. What this means in terms of looking at how we use AI to deliver construction projects, we basically have all the context and information AI needs to do a task sitting in one centralized, easy to access location. Long story short, a PMIS is absolutely fundamental to any construction company if they want to get more out of tools like Claude and ChatGPT. So fundamentally, these tools like Claude, ChatGPT, they're completely agnostic. They don't know anything about you. They don't have your background. They don't understand your project history. For you to actually get them to do useful work, you need to be able to feed them context. Having a PMIS is going to make that process of giving context to the AI models so they do genuinely useful work 1 million times easier. So while yes, historically, PMISs have been important for the reasons I outlined previously, this is only going to be more and more important as time goes on, because for AI to work effectively at managing construction projects, it needs specific information about you, your company, and the way you do things. And the way in practice you can set this up so it's easy to feed into AI models is through a project management information system.